From 3 days to half an hour, China is set to impose a no-fly zone north of Taiwan this Sunday.
I'm at the headquarters of Taiwan's ruling party, which has just chosen its presidential nominee.
The U.S. does damage control with allies after a major intelligence leak. Plus, a task force is set up to find out what caused a spate of deaths around Taiwan's shores. Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Eric Gao. Starting off with the biggest news of the day, China caused a momentary uproar. It announced that it would impose a 3-day no-fly zone north of Taiwan starting this Sunday. But that was quickly walked back, with Taiwan's transport ministry saying Beijing would limit the restriction to just 27 minutes. It's not yet clear why China will be closing the airspace, but Taiwan's defense ministry said it would be for unspecified aerospace activity, such as a satellite launch. The closure will be in international airspace that is managed by Taiwan for civilian air traffic. The proposed location lies on a busy route for passenger aircraft traveling from Japan and South Korea.
这大概距离台湾北面大概85海里左右。那北部呢，大家也都知道北部这个不管是往日本、韩国，是往美国整个国际航路是非常多的。
Meanwhile, China has launched an investigation into trade barriers set up by Taiwan. Beijing says Taiwan is restricting imports on almost 2,500 goods, but it has yet to lift its own bans on a range of Taiwanese products, including fruits and seafood, bans that Taiwan's government says are politically motivated. In local politics, Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party has nominated Vice President Lai Ching-te for the 2024 presidential election. Lai hopes to take over from incumbent Tsai Ing-wen, who has hit her 2-term limit. Stash Butler reports.
At Taiwan's ruling party headquarters in Taipei, Taiwan's vice president moves a step closer to the presidency.
今天我非常荣幸能够获得民进党的提名，参选2024总统大选。
Lai Ching-te will be the Democratic Progressive Party's nominee for January's presidential race after running unopposed. In his speech after the party meeting, he set out his vision for Taiwan.
民主团结、民主治理、民主和平三大民主行动，推动国家的希望工程，达到民主、繁荣、和平的目标。
Lai is hoping to replace President Tsai Ing-wen, who's reached her 2-term limit. The incumbent leader has made global headlines recently by meeting US House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. China reacted by surrounding Taiwan with warplanes and an aircraft carrier. If he wins the presidency, Lai will have to manage ties with a Beijing that views Taiwan as a breakaway province and him and his party as separatists. In an interview with the BBC, President Tsai set out her position that Taiwan is a sovereign state.
We don't have a need to declare ourselves an independent state, but we are an independent country already, and we call ourselves Republic of China, Taiwan, and we have our own system of running the country.
And Lai is in many ways a continuity candidate. He uses the same language as Tsai about Taiwan.
事实上，已经是一个主权独立的国家，不必另行宣布独立。
But he won't be the only candidate in the race. The billionaire founder of Foxconn, Terry Guo, wants to run for the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT. Foxconn makes billions of dollars assembling iPhones in China, and Guo says his international experience makes him the ideal candidate.
我身为一个怀有全球视野、拥有多方关系的国际企业人，我应该挺身而出，解决传统政治人物不能解决的危机。
He's facing competition from the mayor of Taiwan's most populated city, New Taipei, but Mayor Hou You-yi has not yet committed to running. Polls suggest Hou would lose to Lai by a margin of about 12 points, with a third candidate picking up about a fifth of the votes. If the KMT picks Guo instead, the figures suggest he'd lose by more than 20 points, a landslide. But the presidential vote is far from a done deal. The DPP's nomination gives Lai a head start in campaigning for next year's race. But with tensions across the Taiwan Strait, exports suffering from market uncertainty and food prices rising through the roof, Taiwan's second-in-command faces an uncertain path to the presidency. Alex Chen and Stash Butler in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
With the DPP's candidate now chosen, people are wondering who the KMT will pick. But Taiwan's main opposition party is keeping mum. John Van Trieste has this story.
While Vice President Lai Ching-te has just been picked as the DPP's candidate for 2024, it's still unclear who will run against him. So far, the chair of the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, has only said his party will make an announcement when the time is right. But Taiwan's media suggests a consensus could be forming. Reports say an anonymous party insider gives new Taipei Mayor Hou You-yi an 80% chance at clinching the KMT nomination. The source says the remaining 20% goes to Terry Guo, the multi-billionaire founder of electronics giant Foxconn. As speculation grows, Hou says he's confident about his ability to govern.
随时让自己的准备能够随时面对所有的挑战，都能够克服。
Meanwhile, Guo set off on a 4-day trip to Japan on Wednesday, his second overseas trip this month. He's told reporters he won't make any statement until he's back in Taiwan. A formal announcement from the party could still be months away, and it's unclear if Guo would run as an independent if passed over. Though if he did, it'd be a move which would fill next January's election with even more uncertainty. Damon Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
In international news, the U.S. government is urgently investigating the leak of top-secret documents on social media. These documents show that the U.S. has large amounts of intelligence on Russia and that it's also been spying on its allies. Bing Wang has more.
A massive intelligence leak, now a diplomatic crisis. Top-secret documents containing highly sensitive information from the United States were spread on social media last week. It's unclear who leaked the documents. The U.S. Justice and Defense Departments have launched an investigation into the matter.
I will tell you that we take this very seriously, and we will continue to investigate and turn over every rock until we find the source of this and the extent of it.
The leaked documents showed how deep the U.S. has penetrated Russia's intelligence units. The classified papers also contained details on the progress of the war in Ukraine, including casualties on both sides and weapons needed by Ukraine. It also showed the U.S. is spying on its allies, such as Ukraine, Israel, and South Korea, and its adversaries in North Korea, China, and Iran.
This leak, when compared to all the others, is unique in the sense that it is comprised of finished intelligence products.
The United States is now working on damage control with its allies. Many expressed concerns over the leaks.
U.S. officials across the interagency are engaging with allies and partners at high levels over this, including to reassure them of our commitment to safeguarding intelligence and the fidelity of securing our partnerships as well.
The Pentagon is now working quickly to remove the documents from social media. The U.S. intelligence community is now reviewing its security protocols and taking steps to restrict access to sensitive information. This to stop any future leaks that can hurt the U.S. and weaken its allies. Howard Zhang and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
The intelligence leak didn't only reveal secrets from Ukraine. That same data also indicated that the U.S. has been spying on South Korea, one of its key allies in Asia. It's something that both Washington and Seoul have been quick to play down.
양국의 견해가 일치합니다. 공개된 정보의 상당수가 위조되었다. 거기에 대해서 평가가 일치하고.
One of the leaked Pentagon documents detailed internal discussions among South Korean officials. They were discussing U.S. pressure on Seoul to help supply weapons to Ukraine. Opposition lawmakers in South Korea have condemned the U.S. for spying on its partner. But South Korea security officials say the confidential U.S. documents are untrue. Elsewhere in the region, the U.S. and the Philippines launched their largest joint military exercise in decades on Tuesday. At the same time, top officials from both countries met to discuss defense roadmaps in the Indo-Pacific. Burrells Hughes has the story.
One day after China finished its war games around Taiwan, new drills began, just further south. For the first time, the joint annual exercise from the U.S. and the Philippines, known as Balikatan, or shoulder to shoulder in Tagalog, will include live fire drills at sea.
This year's Balikatan will be the biggest ever, an indication of the growth of our alliance and how it continues to evolve to meet our shared goals.
But what exactly are those shared goals? According to officials, peace and stability in a region which sees constant territorial disputes and disagreements, but they also further U.S. interests.
I think this is another way of U.S. Giving this kind of confidence to its Southeast Asian allies and friends that, which was waning over the decades. It's just not the military level exercises that these countries are doing. There are political level and diplomatic level engagements, which is just intensifying just because of Chinese pressures in the region.
In Washington, D.C., top defense and diplomatic officials from the U.S. and Philippines met to agree on a roadmap for security assistance over the next 5 to 10 years, which they maintain is not in response to China.
Our goal is peace, security, stability, creating opportunity. It's not to engage in a new Cold War. It's not to contain China.
But the U.S. is not always a welcome presence. The U.S. military bases in the Philippines were shut in 1992, and there are those who believe officials have been looking for a reason to revitalize. Officials say the drills are not connected to Taiwan, but the exercises will take place on the islands closest to the Taiwan Strait.
U.S. imperialists! Clearly, the war games are intended to project U.S. power in Asia. It's not intended to defend the Philippines. It's not intended to help the Philippines modernize. It's really intended to showcase U.S. power, and it is a preparation for war.
China is also embroiled in a maritime dispute with the Philippines. Its foreign ministry criticized the military cooperation, saying it must not interfere in South China Sea disputes, still less harm China's territorial sovereignty, maritime rights and interests, and security interests.
Beijing is not the reason that Balikatan happens. It's not the reason that it happened now. It's not the reason that it happened this week. And so if Beijing chooses to interpret it that way, I think it's a bit too, it's internalizing its own messages too much.
Despite consistent calls for peace and stability, armed presence is growing in the Indo-Pacific region, and military drills are becoming the new normal. Damon Lin and Burrells Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
The European Commission has said the EU's stance on Taiwan has not changed. This is from the Commission's spokesperson.
Nous avons et nous continuons toujours à appeler pour la paix et la stabilité dans le détroit de Taïwan et que nous nous positionnons de manière forte contre toute volonté de changement unilatéral du statu quo, en particulier par l'utilisation de la force. Voilà ce que l'on peut dire.
These comments come after French President Emmanuel Macron sparked controversy with remarks about Taiwan. Following a trip to China, Macron told news website Politico that Europe should not become a follower of the U.S. He also said that the EU risked becoming embroiled in a conflict over Taiwan. Some EU and U.S. politicians criticized the remarks, saying they exposed cracks in the EU-U.S. alliance. The EU's top diplomat, Joseph Burrell, arrives in China on Wednesday, the latest in a flurry of European leaders to visit the country. To find out more about that visit, our reporter James Chater spoke with Marcin Jezewski from the European Value Center here in Taipei.
Were Macron's comments on Taiwan a diplomatic coup for Beijing?
China is definitely not new to the so-called divide and conquer strategy when it comes to engaging the European Union. Definitely Macron's words that deviate from the overall position of the European Union, which prioritizes preventing any unilateral changes to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, are a win for Beijing because they present another window in which China could put a wedge between members of EU27.
And what can we expect from the top EU diplomat Joseph Burrell's visit to China later this week?
Burrell's visit should have one priority in mind: to correct some of the misconceptions about the European Union's approach to Taiwan and cross-strait relations. Burrell should send a clear message to China that the European Union opposes any unilateral changes to the status quo. I think that Burrells' comments about the actual existence of limits in the friendship between Beijing and Moscow also merit our further consideration. I think that this points to the fact that the European Union has not given up on viewing China as a potential party in trying to bring peace amid the Russian full-scale invasion in Ukraine.
Given Macron's recent comments on Taiwan, though, how difficult is that job of presenting EU unity going to be for Josep Borrell when he's in China?
I think this is definitely a challenge, and in general, whether we talk about the European Union's approach to Beijing and Taiwan or any other third party, we have to remember that the common foreign and security policy is made by consensus, and it is not always easy to devise a consensus among the 27 member states that have different priorities and different outlook on their respective bilateral relations with China. However, an aberration from a unified European stance sort of gives gravity to China's perception that it can circumvent the unfriendly or more assertive EU institutions and instead focus on the pursuit of bilateral ties.
That was James Shader speaking with Marcin Jezewski from the European Value Center. Elsewhere in Asia, Japan's Coast Guard is still searching for a military helicopter that went missing last Thursday. The UH-60 Black Hawk belonged to the country's ground self-defense force. It went missing during a reconnaissance mission north of Miyako Island. None of the 10 crew members who were aboard the helicopter have been found, but civilians have reported seeing a body in nearby waters. Japan's defense ministry has dismissed speculation that the helicopter may have been shot down by Chinese forces. Chinese naval vessels were spotted in nearby waters around the time the helicopter went missing. Coming up, a sea change is underway as scientists discover a new species of clam in Taiwan. Stay tuned to find out more.
I think it's inaccurate to say the U.S. is primarily or largely interested in defending Taiwan because of semiconductors. I think there's interests, I think there are values, I think there's a lot at stake.
Why are semiconductors at the center of the U.S.-China rivalry? Will Washington's $50 billion CHIPS Act work? And is Taiwan's Silicon Shield under threat?
How did the U.S. manage to lose being that leader in manufacturing?
Join CHIPS War author Chris Miller for a compelling conversation about geopolitics and semiconductors.
If you look at the key policy that's driving discussion about security and supply chain resiliency is China's military buildup. How rapidly can we really reestablish the level of deterrence that we need to take this question off the table?
See the world through a new lens with TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The body of a young man was found washed up near Taiwan's shores this week. This is the 20th body to be found near the country's coastlines since February. The government has set up a task force to investigate the reasons for the recent spate of deaths. Bing Wang reports.
This wind turbine, located off Taiwan's western coast, was the site of a gruesome scene on Tuesday. The body of a young man was found washed up on the turbine's platform. He may have spent the last of his energy pulling himself up on it after the boat he was on capsized. Investigators confirmed the man was one of 14 Vietnamese nationals who have been trying to enter Taiwan illegally by sea.
那个后来也证实说，应该就是越南籍，有可能是他刚翻覆的时候，那时候还有体力嘛，遇到那个平台，所以有办法攀爬上去。
The discovery of the corpse marks a grim milestone. Over the past 7 weeks, multiple bodies have been found along Taiwan's coastlines. 10 out of the 14 people on the list provided by Vietnam have been identified. The discoveries have shocked the country, and police have set up a task force to investigate. So far, they found that the people first traveled to China. There, they raised funds to buy a speedboat, which they used to get to Taiwan. However, it's believed that the boat capsized, and everyone on board died. Officials have also questioned the Coast Guard's slow response, since the first incident occurred in February.
这个事情从2月底就被通报了，的确是在3月底
才成立这样的一个专案，那当然也过了1个月了哈。那所以我想这个也是我们要调查的重点啊，到底这些相关的机关哈，他们在掌握到这个情资的过程当中，有没有即刻的去掌握。
The task force says thousands of foreigners attempt to enter Taiwan illegally every year, but it's unusual for such a high number of bodies to be discovered in such a short time. Officials hope their investigations will bring answers about what led to these people's deaths. Thomas Xu and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
In Myanmar, up to 100 people are feared dead after an airstrike in the northwest by the country's military junta. The strike reportedly targeted an opening ceremony for an armed opposition group pushing for democracy in the country. It is the deadliest attack since Myanmar's military overthrew the elected government in February 2021. A spokesperson for the military said it was responsible for the strike. He said the victims were opposing the government. The United Nations and the U.S. State Department have condemned the attack. Over in Cambodia, officials on Tuesday deported 19 Japanese nationals suspected of being involved in phone and online scams. The suspects were detained in a police operation in January. They were held in the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh before being deported to Japan. Tokyo police say they have arrest warrants for the suspects. They allegedly ran scams targeting people in Japan. Thousands of workers have fallen prey to such scams in Southeast Asia. Many have been lured by fake, well-paying job offers and then were forced to work for fraud rings. The UN predicts that India's population will soon surpass that of China. Some estimates say this could happen in mid-April. Both countries have more than 1.4 billion people, and together they make up 1/3 of the world population. China has been the world's most populous country since the UN began keeping records in 1950. But the country's decades under a one-child policy brought down fertility rates and led to an aging population. Over 14% of people in China are 65 or older, while only 7% of India's population is in that age group. This will lead to big differences in the two countries' demographics. India will have a large, young workforce, while China will have fewer working-age adults. Back in Taiwan, AI developers have come up with 2 new creations they say will change how the country does business. As John Van Trieste reports, these bots will cut down on the need for human workers and help generate more profit.
Meet Gaoyin, Taiwan's latest artificial intelligence innovation. This assistant bot can interact with people and answer any questions they may have in flawless Chinese. Industry insiders say it can stand in for receptionists or staff at information counters.
请问你们有什么展演活动？2022
Top Rock 打狗季，一次打包流行金曲天王天后。
And replace humans at call centers or customer service hotlines.
一般的企业不太可能养一堆业务，然后打电话跟客户闲聊来卖东西，但是电脑可以。
Other Taiwanese firms are working on bots that gather and analyze customer data. The idea is to reward customers who use company apps or platforms with points or other perks. Once enough customers are on board, the bots get a picture of what they like and dislike, and what their habits are.
你有数据可以做比较精准的决策，这样子，对。
Some AI developers believe we're on the cusp of a future where humans and machines cooperate, where human expertise is still key, but AI can make doing business easier and more efficient than ever before. Eason Pan and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's most prestigious dance troupe is presenting a new work on Thursday. Cloud Gate Dance Theater will perform Lunar Halo as part of Taiwan Week, a theater arts festival. The dance reflects a world reshaped by technology. The show's choreographer, Zheng Zonglong, says a lunar halo was an omen of impending change to ancient societies, while the moon itself watches over developments on Earth. Multiple large LED panels are used to create an effect like a giant smartphone. Dancers interact with this symbol of technology. Zheng says the performance has been well received by international curators.
许多策展人也看得很细，就是在我们的动作体系里面，很多的旋转，很多的拐，那是在西方的身体语会比较少见的。
Scientists say they have discovered a unique type of clam that is native to Taiwan. Sam Robbins brings us this report on why these mollusks are causing experts to celebrate.
Not quite Chinese and not quite Japanese. That's how scientists are now describing these clams.
experts say Taiwanese clams are genetically distinct from their neighbors, overturning the previous consensus. Scientists are excited about the finding.
你要先厘清说这到底是什么物种，你才能够继续做下去嘛。所以这个发现说我们原来跟周遭的其实是不同的物种，这个是蛮重要的一个发现。
The discovery came after scientists were tasked with repopulating clams in Damsui River. Damsui River flows through Taiwan's capital and is one of the major sources of clams in the country. But upon a closer look at the mollusks, the scientists discovered something a bit fishy.
种类鉴定上其实是有一些疑虑，就是我们搞不清楚到底我们鉴定出来就真的是立文革还是中华文革。
The answer, neither.
在采样的3年以上，然后发现说，不管是养殖的或野生的，然后都没有看到立文革，甚至或中华文革。
After DNA testing, they discovered Taiwanese clams have 9.5 genetic difference from Japanese clams, and 7.6 genetic difference from the Chinese variety. Both figures surpass the 3% threshold for classification as a distinct species. The scientists have now published their results in an international journal and have labeled their discovery the Taiwanese clam, which means now Taiwan's local clams will have their very own distinctive name to call themselves. Leon Lan and Sam Robbins for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these shots of coral spawning in waters off southern Taiwan's Kending. Entire colonies of coral release their tiny eggs into the ocean at the same time. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and see you next time.